Hey guys, this is the third section. Remember, every section corresponds to the textbook, so you can use that as a way in, or you can use the video as a way in. But basically, we're trying to provide you with many different ways into the content. So this time we're looking at something really, really simple. We're looking at the dreaming argument, which is not that complex. You should be able to get it like in the click of a finger. So let's have a look. What's our overall goal? Well, we will explore our experiences of dreaming, and there, because we're talking about experiences, so that's plural, relationship to sense certainty. Uh, Success criteria, we're going to reflect on our experiences of dreaming, and then number two, we're going to explore what we conclude about sense data from this reflection. Pretty easy, just write them down really quickly, give yourself a score out of 4. You may have already predicted what you think that Descartes will say, so it'll be interesting to see if your predictions marry up with what we read and what we say. Once you've done that, remember your APK, so draw a picture of something you remember from your most lucid dream. A lucid dream is a dream that was so vivid, it felt so real that you had no idea that it wasn't. Okay, and you also had a bit of control in your lucid dream. You could control some of the things that were happening. So once you get all that done, keep playing and we'll move on to the summary and the reading of this particular section. Cheers. Right, so this section's pretty easy. I mean, it again further elaborates on the doubt of sense data that we were talking about before. And it's based on, look, what happens when you think about a dream that's so real. And then, of course, you get into a situation where when you're dreaming, it felt like it was real. There's no way you question the reality of the dream. But when you woke up, all of a sudden you realize, well, look, it's not real, okay? The dream was not real. Dream not real. So then, if you take that conclusion logically, you wake up and you apply that experience to what you're going through now. Right now, the world you feel in is so real, doesn't it? It feels that way. So what's to say that the world you're living in right now while you think you're awake isn't just another dream? And how can you trust all this sense data that you're getting right now? Because really, you got sense data while you were dreaming. There were colors, there were shapes, there were images, there are ideas formed through those observations. And you're doing the same thing right now. So right now, you could be in a dream. You just don't know about it. Take a note. Okay, so remember before we were talking about judgments, and we were basically saying that the madman who thinks he's a pumpkin or a well-dressed prince, it might be completely crazy because really he's naked. But what's to say we're not crazy? What's to say we're not perceiving the madman in a way that he isn't? He might actually be dressed, but we're crazy and see him as a way that he's not. But also, if we say that that madman's not qualified to make judgments, then how come we're qualified to make judgments using the same approach that he does, which is looking at his sense data, trusting that it's real, and making a judgment? If I use that approach, then I could come to really wrong conclusions, just like he does. And maybe the same could be said when we analyze dreams. Let's start reading. Here we go. Go away. A brilliant piece of reasoning. As if I were not a man who sleeps at night and regularly has the same experiences while asleep as a madman do when they're awake. So, when we're asleep, we kind of have those dreams of objects or things that we feel are real, but obviously they're not. They're complete illusions, but they come through our sensory experience while dreaming. Indeed, sometimes even more improbable ones. How often asleep at night am I convinced of just such familiar events that I am here in my dressing gown sitting by a fire when in fact I'm lying undressed in bed? Yet, at the moment, my eyes are certainly wide awake when I look at this piece of paper. I shake my head, and it is not asleep. I stretch out and feel my hand, and I do so deliberately, and I know what I am doing. And all this would not happen with such distinctness to someone asleep. Indeed, as if I did not remember other occasions when I had been tricked by exactly similar thoughts while asleep. So what he's saying is that, look, I had in some of my dreams this kind of distinctness. So he says, and all this would happen with such distinctness to someone asleep. So the same kind of experience is something that someone would have asleep if they were dreaming that they were in the same situation that he was. All right. Indeed, as if I did not remember other occasions when I've been tricked by exactly similar thoughts while asleep, so I wouldn't remember. As I think about this more carefully, I see plainly that there are never any sure signs by means of which being awake can be distinguished from my being asleep. The result is that I begin to feel dazed, and this very feeling only reinforces the notion that I may be asleep. So, because it's a sensory experience dreaming, and because it's a sensory experience being awake, well, it logically applies that you could doubt the fact that you are awake when you're awake, and it's uncertain. All right, then we move on to the next paragraph. Suppose that I am dreaming, and that these particulars, that my eyes are open and that moving my head and stretching out my hands, are not true. Perhaps indeed I do not even have such hands or such a body at all. Nonetheless, it must surely be admitted that the visions which come in sleep are like paintings, which must have been fashioned in the likeness of things that are real, and hence that at least these general kinds of things, eyes, head, hands, and the body as a whole, are things which are not imaginary but are real and exist. For even when painters try to create sirens, you know what the sirens are, of Odysseus, and satyrs, special creatures, with the most extraordinary bodies, they cannot give them natures which are new in all respects. They simply jumble up the limbs of different animals. Or, if perhaps they manage to think up something so new that nothing remotely similar has ever been seen before, something which is therefore completely fictitious and unreal, at least the colours used in the composition must be real. By my similar reasoning, although these general kinds of things, eyes, head, hands, and so on, could be imaginary, it must at least be admitted that certain other simpler and more universal things are real. These are, as it were, the real colours from which we form the images of things, whether true or false, that occur in our thought. So it's basically saying that in dreams must be made out of something. And he's still exploring this idea of sense data, but dreams must be made out of something that we've sensed outside of dreams. So we could make up the imaginary monster, but, the form, the shape, the hair, the color, all these things are things that are observed from outside experience. So he's saying maybe this is real. And I'll give you a hint. He goes on to reject that it is later. Okay, so that's fine. He's actually alluding to something here of what we call the brain in the vat theory. Brain in the vat theory is this theory that if you could live in a giant simulation and just be a brain living in some nutrient broth in a vat somewhere, but as long as electrodes are plugged into that brain, providing you with some kind of simulation, you could be living in a dreamlike state that isn't real. But of course, what is in the dreamlike state or what is in the simulation has to be based on things that are real. That's what he's saying so far. Take some notes and we'll quickly go to the success criteria. Right, so did we reflect on our experiences while dreaming? Yes. Have we looked at sense certainty? Yes, we have. But this time he's saying, well, okay, I've moved away from saying that objects could be real because I could dream them and they could be made up. But the qualities and the things in these objects might still be real. Right, that's where he's at the moment. And I'm letting you know right now, he completely rejects that. Thinks it's completely bogus, and we'll look at why in a minute. But basically, he says, look, things that make up the objects in my dreams are like things that make up the objects of my sensory experience. So even though I could make up something like making up a painting, which is fictitious, what's in the painting are, has real things like colors and form. So maybe the outside world has colors and form, and maybe that's what's real. I just doubt the objects. Do you get where I'm coming from? So take a note, record it, think about it, and rescore yourself on these success criteria, as you should do at the end of every single class. Cheers.